Hi everyone and welcome to a new video where I show you my entire process for making a shadow box. This one was for my Castle in the Sky shadow box based on the Ghibli movie. And it's insane number of layers. I had 16 layers of paper for this one, which is the highest number I've ever worked with. The numbers you're seeing there on the preview were just to help me get organized because I was going to print them on different various thickness of paper. I'll get more into that in a second once we get started. But yeah, this is a box that took a bit of logistics, a bit of organizing. So yeah, let's get started. So I wanted to make a scene where the kids discover the castle for the first time and see it like emerge out of a sea of clouds, which is why I wanted a really, really large number of cloud layers to give it a sense of depth and a sense of scale so that the castle would look more imposing as it emerges from that many clouds, and it would give it a nice sense of distance and scale. But the risk when you're doing that is because it's so much paper in front of the light source, I run the risk of the box being way too dark, of not enough light shining through, which would like obstruct all of the details and would mean that you're not seeing anything quite clearly. The castle wouldn't really stand out, the glider wouldn't really stand out. So the way I chose to deal with that problem is to make most of the paper of the clouds on really thin paper. So most of them are just on regular printing paper, 90 GM, and make the castle and the very front layers with the glider be on thicker paper than I usually work with. So 135 GM paper, while I normally work with 120. The reason behind that was that the thicker your paper is, the less light shines through it, so the darker its shadow becomes. So using thicker paper guaranteed that it would stand out from the rest of the scenery. So the silhouette would be darker and starker, and would draw the eye compared to all of those clouds in the background and the foreground. Which was a bit more challenging than I expected, actually, because you're seeing me here cutting really thin lines and really tiny details on thicker paper than I'm accustomed to. You wouldn't think there's that much of difference between 120 and 135 thickness, but because those are really thin lines, but I still have to make two cuts for them. You make one cut along the line that you've drawn, and then you make a second cut right next to it just to widen the gap that you've cut a little bit, to make the whatever line you're cutting a bit more visible, because with just one cut it's barely visible at all. It barely looks like you've cut through the paper, so you need to make those two cuts to make the hole just a little bit wider to make the details noticeable. But that means you have to be very precise and really make sure that your blade doesn't go over the first cut that you've made, doesn't overlap with any of the other details. And the smaller the line is, like the narrower it is, the more precise you have to be. And when you're working with thicker paper, not only do you have to be precise, but you have to press down a lot harder. So it was like an unexpected workout for my hand. I think it took me something like a couple hours to do the castle, and my hand was actually hurting by the end of it, and I needed to take a little break. Because yeah, those are a lot of tiny lines for my poor hands. But the point of doing it with thicker paper was that I really needed the castle to stand out from all of the clouds, because I think like it stands roughly in the middle of all the layers. I had something like 6 layers in front of it, and 5, 6 layers behind it. God, I can't remember now. But yeah, quite a distance between it and the light source, with a lot of other paper between it and the light source. So if I had made it my regular paper, there was a very high chance that you would not have really seen it as well as I would have wanted to. It would have, the shape would have been too light, or it would have gotten too lost in the clouds, which would have been a real shame, because it's like it's the showstopper of the box. It's like that. It's meant to be this big imposing figure, so I needed it to, like, obviously you still want to see the details, and you want details to be visible in the light, but you also want it to be darker so that the eye gets drawn to it. And it was the same principle for the glider at the front, because those first layers, the clouds and the glider, are the furthest away from the light. With a lot of paper between them and the light. So if I hadn't made it into thicker paper, they would have been lost completely. You would not have seen them. They would just be like gray shapes. And the eye would not be drawn to them at all. So making it into thicker paper guarantees that they're darker. And also, because those beginning layers, I'm sorry I'm talking about them once they're already done and gone from the screen. But those are layers where I had clouds at the bottom and at the top of the frame, which kind of made, because they would be darker as well, it kind of made it like a doorway. So it kind of makes it feel like, as you're watching the box, you're going through a door and looking at this magical world with a big magical floating castle in the middle of some crazy clouds, which adds to like the atmosphere of the box. It's like you're with those two kids and you're just stepping into a different world, which is one of the appeals of the movie. I remember as a kid watching it, I love, like, from the moment they're on Lapse, on the castle, it's like they're in a different world. Like, they've escaped to this crazy, fantastical, mystical place, and that just made me dream as a kid. I loved that part so much, and it's one of the reasons it's one of the Ghibli movies I rewatched the most as a kid, just because I love that feeling of stepping into a different world, and that's what I try to recreate a bit here with my bees. And here are a couple of clouds that I wanted to paste into the background on the back paper layer, because believe it or not, I felt like there weren't enough clouds. I wanted to add some more. Here's me making the frame. I'm just realizing now with my table and my floor, it really feels like I'm just like, there's no difference between the table and the floor. That's a bit weird. Oh well. I've been asked sometimes what that blue thing is. That is called a trimmer? Trimmer cutter, something like that. And that allows you to make sure your edges are completely straight and completely equal to one another. So it's just a tool to help you make sure the box is completely straight and will not curve in any way or like tilt. To separate the layers, I worked a bit differently for this one, so I didn't do foam strips for every single 16 layers of paper, because that would have been way too much space and it would not have fit inside my frame. I think the maximum layer, spaced out layers that I can fit in there while still having room for the light is like 9, and 9 is pushing it. So what I chose to do is separate the layers by groups of 3 or 4. So I had, like, say, the first 3 layers of paper, which is like the layer with the glider and then 2 more layers of clouds behind it. Those were 3 layers that I kept together and then pasted foam behind that. And like I did groups of 3 or 4 like that, so that you still had a sense of depth, but also like made it just made it fit inside of the frame, because you can't make the box frame really wide. It also meant it really was a pain to get them all to stick, because like the layers kept getting caught on everything, because it's also thinner paper than I'm used to working with. They kept like undulating and folding and getting caught on stuff. So it really was a pain to space them out correctly. I'm happy with how it looked, but my god, was it like I said, logistics went behind it. But yeah, here we go. Here's the final piece. I'm happy with how it looked. It was like a bit experimental for me, because like I said, I've never worked with that many layers before. And because of that, I couldn't be entirely sure that it would turn out correctly, or really have the amount of light and the amount of details and the amount of starkness that I was looking for. So it was a bit of a gamble, that box, but I made an educated guess and gave it my best shot, and I think it turned out really well, actually. It does give that sense of depth and scale that I was looking for. The glider stands out nicely, which was the part I was least confident about. And the castle is nice and detailed and nice and visible, like I was hoping, so wasn't entirely sure where I was going, but it ended up okay, I think. I think my gamble paid off. But yeah, so that's my finished piece. Thank you very much for watching. If you're interested in buying some of my boxes, this one has been sold already, but if you're interested to see what else I've got on sale, you can go ahead and go to my Etsy store at StripsofLight, link in the description. You can also follow me on Instagram to have more updates about what I'm working on. Make sure to like this video, make sure to leave a comment, give me a subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. And if you were interested in this, but want to see every step of the process less sped up, in a more chill way, no commentary, just some nice music, then check out my step-by-step video on my Castle in the Sky box. I'll leave a link at the end of the video or something. If you're interested in seeing every step slower and just snippets of it. But thank you very much for watching, and see you next time!